Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, some call it the hidden crime, due to the victims who are too afraid to come forward and to those criminals who abuse in the privacy of the home. Today, we're discussing the continuing fight against domestic violence. In spite of progress regarding public awareness, there are still women and children and men who fear for their lives. Sociologists and police are concerned that the lockdown caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has increased the possibility of domestic violence. Meantime, information on how to escape the abuse continues via television, radio, and social media. Fox 10 News found this public service announcement that was recently produced by American singer and songwriter Natalie Merchant. Take a look.
I was with him several years, and I thought that he was a great husband.
The abuse didn't start out physical.
He did his best to keep me away from my family. What could I do?
I didn't think I could ask for help.
Domestic violence can happen to anyone. Reach out to a family member or friend if you feel that they're being abused. Your willingness to get involved could be the first step to their safety. Don't do nothing.
And that's the message there, don't do nothing. Today's guests are Tony Ann Torrance, Executive Director of Penelope House. Also joining us today, Melanie Bankhead, the Penelope House Shelter Supervisor, and Kristen Murphy, the Court Advocate Supervisor for the Penelope House. Domestic violence awareness, how you can help and how to get help. When Perspectives continues after this break. Our guest this morning, Tony Ann, who is the Executive Director of the Penelope House, and also joining us, Melanie Bankhead, who is the Shelter Supervisor at the Penelope House. Ladies, thank you both for being here this morning. Of course, domestic violence, a very sad topic and one that sort of a commentary on our society. First, let's talk about what's the definition. How do you define what we're calling domestic violence?
Domestic violence is a learned pattern of behavior where one person totally dominates another through all kind of control mechanisms. They could be psychological, sexual, financial, verbal, and physical. And it's mostly one person trying to dominate another and control their life.
And you know, when you think of domestic violence, a lot of times it's family violence. And so with Penelope House, we really focus in on the intimate partner violence.
And of course, both of you ladies have been involved with this subject matter for years. And Tony Ann, I left out your married name. Of course, a lot of people know you by your family name of Cumanis, but Torrance, Tony Ann Torrance, as well as Melanie, your time, over 20-some years of involvement in making a difference in the lives of those who are affected by this. When you look at the information of defining it, why do you think it's still happening today? We know that we've had years of this being brought to the forefront and awareness being talked about, discussed, and of course the very tragic situations that we report on the news where it's gone to the unbelievable end. Why are we still dealing with domestic violence this day?
Well, because this is, again, a learned pattern of behavior that's passed down from generation to generation or culturally. And in culture in our society, we unfortunately have not been able to do the things that need to do to make this stop. The education, prevention education, which is what Penelope House provides. We also have our court advocates that do to help victims in court, but mainly making sure that people understand that this is not acceptable. For such a long time, people thought this was just a family issue, a family secret. It just happened in the home, and it was just embarrassing. And not until the late 1990s, early 2000s, were we able to even say that it was a law in Alabama that domestic violence was a crime. So once we've defined it as a crime, think about that. That's only been 21 years. So you cannot change generational kinds of things in just 21 years. It's so important to make sure that we hold people accountable for committing those crimes. And once that happens, then we'll be able to see a difference.
Tony Ann, are there warning signs that people can be aware of that we may be about to head down this road?
You know, it's kind of hard to say that because a lot of times, you know, when people enter into a relationship, it's like Prince Charming and Cinderella. I mean, everyone puts their best face forward. And so it's kind of hard initially to recognize something like that. But as you are becoming more intimate together, as you're dating, when you start seeing behaviors of like jealousy, you know, controlling behaviors where they don't want you to, you know, spend time with your family or friends, little things where, you know, oh, I think you look so pretty in this dress, not that outfit. You know, when they're starting to kind of really take control and allowing decisions not to be made like as a partnership. We're discussing things together. It's more of you're told what to do. And a lot of times, you know, I always tell people if you went on your first date and someone slapped you, you would never go back out with them again. But if that first date is wonderful and the second date is wonderful and the third date's wonderful and you build this connection with somebody and then out of the blue they come home from work and you've prepared a beautiful meal and they slap you in the face because the chicken was burned, you start internalizing thinking I did something wrong and that's why he hit me. And so those kind of behaviors, those kind of attitudes, those kind of changing your psyche, you know, happen over time. And so it's, you know, once you have a connection with somebody, it's hard just to turn off and just quit the relationship.
Do you think some of the high-profile situations and cases that we've had in the past, how they were dealt with may have continued this not being dealt with effectively? We think back about the 1980s and during the Reagan administration, John Fetters and his ex-wife Charlotte, what happened and the public nature that she brought it to the attention. Of course, she did a book that later became a movie. Then, of course, recently in the Trump administration, dealing with Andy Puzner as well as Rob Porter. Do you think how these high-profile situations and cases, how they were handled may have been more detrimental than helpful?
I think not holding perpetrators accountable absolutely is detrimental because it says to victims, we're not protecting you. We'll put you in a shelter, and you can try to flee, but the perpetrator does not give up. He feels as if, or she, if it's a perpetrator, is a male or a female, feels as if they own that other person and they belong to them. So they don't give up. A victim on an average leaves 5 to 7 times before they leave safely. And that's why I always get so frustrated when people say, why doesn't she leave? That's absolutely false. Why doesn't the perpetrator stop what they are doing?
Yes.
And so why does not the criminal justice system ensure that that victim is protected? So that's why it's so important for us to have a change in our belief system, a change in our mindset, that we understand this is not acceptable. It is not okay to hit your family member under any circumstance. It's not okay to control your family member. It is not okay to do those kinds of things. And once we are able to do that, I think as a society we will definitely have changes.
Yeah, we don't want to blame the victim. Now,
Never.
looking, Tony Ann and Melanie, both at what we've been dealing with since March of last year with the coronavirus and how it's affected the home situation, how has it affected what you've had to deal with in relationship to cases reported, the number, more, or how has it been for you doing your job to help those suffering through this domestic violence?
Yeah, well, there's two sides to the coin, because the first side of the coin is what's happening in the community. And I think, you know, in the beginning, in March, when the pandemic first hit, I think everyone was freaking out because no one understood the virus, no one knew anything hardly. And a lot of crime across the board, if you look at the city of Mobile County, crime overall in March was down just because everyone was caught off guard and not understanding and worried, afraid, whatever. But as soon as we started seeing things in the lockdown, that's when things really got interesting because a lot of victims were trapped in their homes with their abuser. So the ability to reach out, you know, without someone in the home was limited. And kids in school, sometimes the kids in school would confide in a teacher or a counselor of abuse in the home. So possible outlets of letting it be known what was happening in the home were kind of cut off. And so there was like I said, there's two sides to that coin. In some ways, the numbers were down initially, But then as soon as some of the precautions were lifted, some of the curfews were lifted, as people were returning to normal life or parts of normal life, then we started seeing the domestic violence incidents increase. So, the way the shelter has responded, and kudos to our staff. We have not closed at all throughout the pandemic. We've provided services, whether the crisis line, whether in shelter, court, and prevention education. We've continued our services, but we've had to do things differently, to say the least.
Right. One of the things, we've done several things in terms of wearing masks, doing the social distancing, obviously. We also have telehealth that we do with clients while they're in the shelter with their case managers. We are providing every single service that we've provided before the pandemic. We're still doing the same things that we want to do to help victims. One of the main things is support, to let them know that they are not alone, that we are here, and that we can provide whatever they need in terms of safety and protection. And we've been very proud of being able to do that for our families.
Of course, COVID-19 has been a trying issue for all of us in many ways, and in this particular situation, it is really sad that it has gotten in the way of proceeding in a normal way that you've operated for years, and of course you've learned some new things. What would you say the major takeaway has been that you've learned during this period?
That people are resilient, that they absolutely can withstand and be able to find our resources and still be able to do the things that they need to do to be safe and to be happy and live peacefully. And we've had so many families that be able to be successful even through the pandemic, to be able to relocate or find a home that they can live in peacefully. Through all of our support system, we've been able to continue that resiliency and to show survivors that they can survive and they can live beyond this.
And I think as an agency, I think we've always known it, but it certainly became more apparent is the importance of our community partners.
Right.
In the very beginning of the pandemic, we had a conversation with Dr. Aisha with the Mobile County Health Department. What do we need to do in the shelter to make sure that we keep our victims safe when they're with us? We've had the United Way, Southwest Alabama, whenever we had needs, they've done drives where they've provided masks, cleaning supplies. They've held fundraisers where we had emergency funds available to us. We've had the support of law enforcement working with us and making sure that we're doing all the things we need to do so when they bring them to us, it's done safely. So, many of our community partners have all really worked together to make sure that the community was providing the services that they needed to, and us in particular continuing with the needs of those that we serve.
Tony Ann and Melanie, we thank you both so much for what you do every day. And when we come back, we're going to take a break and we're going to hear about the court advocate side. We'll be meeting Christian Murphy, who will talk about that. And Melanie, thank you again for being a part of this first discussion this morning. And of course, thank you so much for your more than 20 years of service to domestic violence abuse in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. Perspectives will continue in just a moment with more on the Penelope House and how they are being a ray of hope in the fight against domestic abuse. This morning on Perspectives, we're talking about domestic violence, and our very special guest this morning, Executive Director of the Penelope House, Tony Ann Torrens, and now joining us, the Court Advocate Supervisor of the Penelope House, Christian Murphy. We thank you both, of course, for being a part of this discussion, and Christian now joining us on that. One of the statements made by some of the national websites say that domestic violence cases are resolved, many are resolved without going to trial. Is that true for our area?
Well, there's a lot of barriers going forward with domestic violence cases. And intimate partner violence specifically, perpetrators have such a high knowledge of the victim, their fears, and can use manipulation to really take advantage and intimidate. So often cases you'll see that clients are overwhelmed with the court process, and one of the things that advocates do is assist, answer questions, and help support and explain their rights. There are very many different ways that cases can become resolved in court. But as for resolving before going to court specifically, I can't say that we have a prevalence specifically for that.
Tony Ann, in your years of dealing with the cases that come through the Penelope House, when you talk about how the cases are handled, give us an idea of how this began when you started dealing with the legal part of the equation.
Well, as Kristen said, anyone dealing with the court in general, it's a little intimidating. The judge up front, and you've got so many players in the court and between the attorneys and everything else, that alone is intimidating no matter what kind of case you're doing. So with domestic violence, we saw with victims in the shelter that we had the opportunity to really lay out and explain things, what's going on, what they can do to assist their case, if they're ready to go forward with it. Some clients or victims are just like, I just don't want anything else to do with them again. I want to leave. I've got family in California. I just want to get the heck out of Dodge and be done with it. And so we work with them and try to connect them with their support systems, and even shelters, in other states where they can relocate and just be done with it.
Yes.
Whereas others who really want to, I don't want to say fight back, but they want to make sure that their life, they take control of their lives. And this is a good step in how to do that, is hold that a perpetrator accountable, and what can I do? What do I want done, and how do I make it happen, is what we empower them to do through connections with like Legal Services of Alabama, and then a good understanding of what your rights are.
Yes. Yes.
Kristen, when you talk about the courts, which courts handle the domestic violence cases?
So we cover 4 counties, 28 courts in 4 counties. I have 9 advocates and myself that serve in those courts. And it's Mobile, Clark, Choctaw, and Washington counties. Now, Mobile specifically has a DV docket that is designated in our city municipality. And it's a very large court that sees a great volume of cases going through. One of the wonderful aspects of it is it is specific to domestic violence and has resources available in the court. And we have always had 2 advocates that assist in that court. We do a lot of work ahead of time to prepare and contact clients so that they understand their rights and can get to court safely, get connected with their prosecutor, understand where they need to go, what's going on. A lot of times people have no idea what's set ahead of them or what path they're supposed to take. So we start from there, and safety planning is the foundation of not just the shelter, but court cases as well. So restraining order assistance and identifying how to implement that in a safety plan and enforce is a big part of what we all do, and we utilize in the court system.
And of course, this morning we've been talking about how COVID-19 and the coronavirus has affected so much of our lives, the operations at Penelope House, as well as dealing with how you handle and help your clients. The courts have also suffered through this period because not being able to have court in the normal way, and there have been different changes and adjustments. How has that affected Penelope House and how you help your clients who are going through the courts?
So I would say that everything was different. There were so many different aspects of programs and court systems that were dialed back or closed off, and so a lot of people didn't know what services were available. And everything was being affected by COVID-19. Therefore, everything had to kind of be addressed virtually, and some of the type of cases that are immediate hearings that must be seen as quickly as possible are protection from abuse orders, which are the strongest restraining orders you can get, and they're done through domestic relations court, circuit court. And we partnered with Tashonda Smith she's a deputy clerk with the Mobile Circuit Court Clerk's Office, and worked with all parties to really get a process in place where clients could call the crisis line, assist with an advocate step by step to have those PFAs filed in a timely manner and not have that option or availability closed off. So a lot of collaboration, and then learning to do things electronically, safely, confidentially, and putting steps in place to get that out to clients so that we could do so. So a lot of collaboration with all the courts and prosecutors were in place.
Well, Tony Ann, never enough time to talk about everything, but as we're closing out this morning, take about 30 seconds and send a message to someone who's watching this morning that they do need your help.
You know, we have our crisis line open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You will always talk with the person. And so not only for those that are in need for shelter, but for those who think, I'm in a situation and I need to understand better. I need someone to talk to. I don't want to talk to family or friends. I want a non-biased person to talk to. They can call anytime and talk to one of our staff members where they can walk them through and talk about options or whatever. The crisis line is 342-8994. It's open 24 hours a day.
We thank you both ladies, as well as Melanie Bankhead, who joined us in the earlier segment, for being a part of the program today, and hopefully this information will be valuable to someone who's watching today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, for more information on how you can help or how to get out of an abusive situation, contact the Penelope House at the website penelopehouse.org. And the phone number you see on the screen there at 251-342-8994. Now, this is a crisis line that's available 24 hours a day. In addition, the Mobile County District Attorney's Office also has information and help for those who are suffering from domestic violence. Please give them a call at the phone numbers and website that you see here, mobileda.org/domestic violence. And their number, by the way, 251-574-8400. Now, there is hope if you can only reach out. Well, please join us here next Saturday morning at 9 a.m. for Perspectives as we discuss those important issues and seek solutions. We'll get an update on the Clotilda. Thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week.
Thanks for watching Fox 10 News. Watch us live wherever you are, on our mobile, our streaming news app, and you can also watch us on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV.